Kevin, thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's begin our journey with the riot. This movie right now with what's going on in America seems just about as poignant and timely as possible. Talk to me about the making. What made you make this film, and how does it feel in this modern era to have it out with what's going on in America?
Well, that's a lot. That's 12 questions in one, but I can I can handle that
Yes, sorry.
because I've been thinking about this for a long time. I grew up kind of in the shadow of this event. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. My dad was a fireman there, and so he was actively present when the riots were happening, and it dramatically changed the area where we lived, to the point where at my school within about 2 years, probably half of the population moved away.
Wow.
So I always thought about it as an amazing piece of history that so many people don't know anything about. And the more time goes by, the fewer people know what it's about. And during the shooting of this, I actually met people who live a block away from where this happened, young people who don't really know anything about it. And I think that's kind of why the same things are happening again still 60 almost 60 years later. So I had been kicking around the idea in my head for a long time to tell this story. I've always been a storyteller, a filmmaker. And one day I was having a beer with my father and another retired fireman, and I mentioned that I was thinking about this. And this other guy, Artie, says, well, if you're going to do it, you better do it soon, because the people who can tell the story are leaving us rapidly.
Yeah.
And so that kind of kicked me to the point where I had to get busy. And I started working on it in 2010. And probably at least a dozen people who are in it are no longer with us.
Wow.
So it was the time to do it. And so now I feel like it's a snapshot of history that is invaluable.
I didn't know anything about this. I mean, I knew that there was chaos. My dad came here from New York. He was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island. And when he came here, we had riots that happened in the 60s. And there was some things that went on. What's been the reception for this film overall? What have you heard? What's been the reaction?
Most of the reception is really good. The thing I'm proudest of, I think, is that people from all spectrums of life and politics and socioeconomics all appreciate it, and almost all of them feel like it's very fair and kind of covers the whole thing. I was just getting started on it when I realized that if you ask 10 people a question, you get 10 different answers. And so I realized that the way to tell this, I decided, was to put in all those opinions and let the viewer kind of parse through that and figure out where the truth lies within.
So the one thing that happens in this process of artistry is that unexpectedly or maybe expectedly you discover things, you realize things about yourself in the process of making something like Riot. What did you learn about yourself or where you grew up? What did you not realize before you went in that now you do that was maybe unexpected?
Well, I didn't realize how long this would take. I had originally thought, I'll spend a year on this. I mean, my heart is really in fiction storytelling, and I had a couple of fiction films that I've been trying to get off the ground and wasn't finding the investments I needed. So I said, well, I'll do this. It'll be much less expensive, and I'll get this under my belt, and then move on to the things I really want to do. So I thought I would spend a year, and then as I started putting it together, and again, I discovered that every different person has a new perspective. So it made sense to include more and more people. And then I started getting politicians. I got one of the former mayors of the city. And then I thought, well, I should get, there's others, I'll get them all. And I ended up interviewing every mayor elected in Newark since 1967. So that was very time consuming because some of them are hard to reach, especially, for example, Ken Gibson, who was the first African American mayor of any major northeastern city. At this point, he's an older man. He doesn't have email. Nobody knows where he is. It took a lot of digging to find him. And I was so glad I did, because A, he has this incredible history, and B, he's one of those guys that when they get older, they don't care what anybody thinks about what they say. So he was not afraid to speak his mind, which was fantastic.
So take me back to your beginnings in Jersey. How did a kid from Jersey grow up and get into film and TV? Was this always a part of your plan? Did you always dream of having this life?
I think I always just enjoyed telling stories and playing with electronics. When I started college as an undecided uh, liberal arts major, and I took a couple of communication courses, and I just kind of became fascinated with the whole idea of how communication really works at a basic level, where it's so difficult to communicate exactly what you're thinking. When I say red, I have something in my mind, and you have something a little bit different in your mind.
Yeah.
And so that whole idea captured me. And then I ended up going into working at a college radio station. I love that. And I started taking TV courses, and that was like radio times 10. And I found my home there. And I ended up getting an internship at a TV station, and then worked in production all my life.
So what was your favorite film? What was your favorite show? What really swayed the way you approach your work and your art?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, if I say what my favorite film is, that's a list of about 100.
Right.
There's so many come to mind. I mean, like The Deer Hunter is one that I love, that a lot of people aren't even aware of, some younger folks.
Yeah.
And of course, the obvious classics, The Wizard of Oz, Citizen Kane. Uh, so there's so many. And everyone, I mean, every week I'm out looking at movies, and every new one adds a little something to the idea that maybe I'll do something. I'll take a little bit of that energy and make it part of my next thing.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspirational force that's allowed you to evolve in this industry that's pretty tough to not only get into, but to have a long career like you've had?
Oh boy, I think John Sayles comes to mind as somebody, as a New Jersey transplant who did a lot of really phenomenal films that are a little bit under the radar because they're a little different and adventurous. He hasn't done too much lately, but that's kind of the vibe that I always appreciated. It's kind of a unique perspective on storytelling.
So the one thing I really want to dive into here is the latest project, The Crossing, based on a true story, deeply personal for you. Talk to me a little bit. I want to go right back to the beginning because I think a lot of people out there need to understand when you decide to take on a project, it's an enormously long process. Like Riot, how long did that take from the idea that you thought that you were going to do it till the minute it hit a TV screen?
That was a little over 15 years.
Wow.
And the first edition of it took about 5 years. So it was basically complete in 5 years. But then all kinds of things get in the way, mainly funding. Even when in a public television film like this, when it's finished, it's still not finished because it's full of music and photographs and news footage that you have to pay for before you can show it to anyone.
Yeah.
So I spent quite a few years trying to raise that money. And once you get accepted by PBS, they let you sell these what they call underwriter banners, the thing that comes at the front of the show that says this program was made possible by.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, well, that's the ticket to everything there. But it turns out those things are much harder to sell than I ever imagined, because you can't call up General Motors and say, hey, send me some money. Nobody talks to you. So
Yeah.
you got to have those connections, which I don't. So finally, a few months ago, I just decided I'm going to do this myself if it kills me. I was ready to close retirement accounts and spend whatever I had to make it happen. And luckily, a number of friends, I did a crowdfunding campaign, about 60 friends put in some money, and an anonymous donor put in a lot of money that made it possible to get this thing done. And it's going to be out there in the next couple of weeks.
It's almost like a miracle whenever these things come to fruition. That's a long,
It
long time.
is.
That's like the
Yeah,
length of a kid getting to be a teenager. I mean, there's a lot that
right.
goes into it.
Right. A lot of my audience was not born when I started this.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's all about not giving up. I go to all kinds of film festivals and meet filmmakers, and almost all of them have a story about how many years it took. It's usually 5, 7, 8 years. Not many are 15 years like this. But you don't meet the person who says I gave up after 2 years because they're not there.
And I would think right now, with what's going on in America, with everything that's happening with ICE in Minneapolis, we tend to be in America, we don't want to repeat the same things, and that was in the preview that you mentioned. The woman at the end said, we don't ever want to see this again. It's bad. And I think there's a part of this coming out right now that the time couldn't be any better for us to look and examine at what's happened in America to avert that level of disaster. What's your feeling on that?
Well, the feeling is sadness primarily because I thought this was going to be released. It looked like we were there in 2020
Yeah.
when the George Floyd thing was going down, and I felt that was the most possible, best opportune time to tell this story. And now, 5, 6 years later, it's the same thing again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's depressing that we haven't learned our lesson. But hope this at least turns a few heads and makes people think a little.
But I think that's the thing that's beautiful about filmmakers is that you're putting these historical documents out to hopefully avert levels of disaster. Things are happening now, but if we look at this and the people like Cory Booker and all of these luminaries that you have in here, those are powerful, mighty voices, not only in politics, but in America right now, that could be a document to say, hey, we need to think about what we're doing right now. We need to switch things up a little bit.
Right? Yeah. They just the hope is to get it seen as widely as possible and have people think and maybe who knows where it leads.
So, and coming from Newark and examining this and looking at your career, do you feel a level of this being full circle in your career and finding some level of completion, something that's special about this because this is about home?
Yeah, it is nice to finally get some national exposure after years of working in the dark, sort of. It's tough to imagine uh, that kind of acceptance when when you work on this thing, you're alone in a dark room by yourself for months and months at a time. And it takes a little bit of insanity to think, oh, yeah, everybody's going to see this. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
So when it finally happens, it's very rewarding.
So, as I was mentioning before, we were going to get into the crossing, and this is a multi-generational look at. There's a secret. There's all of. I mean, immigration. You got all of these different stories, these strings that are coming in. How did this story come about? When did this begin?
Um, well, it's based loosely on the story of my grandmother who immigrated to the U.S. from Ireland when she was maybe a teenager or just past that age. And she had a secret that she never told until she was in her 90s. And so when I did find out about it, we never really found out that this was true until after she was gone, which was kind of tragic in itself. So I always thought that was kind of a fascinating story. And then back in 2016, when a certain politician got elected in Washington, I started thinking about what should be doing with my life, and I actually decided to apply for citizenship in Ireland. Partly for that reason, and partly because I know that they have a lot of programs to support filmmakers. And I found out that to get into most of these programs, you need to have a story that somehow reflects Irish culture. And that's what made me think about finally telling this story. So it ended up being 90% fictional with a central character that's 98% my Nana.
And I think one of the backbones to this is immigration, which has been an issue in this country. All of us came from somewhere. My great grandparents came from Italy to Ellis Island. All of us are a part of that, and I think that's a part of this movie is that it's illuminating the fact that we need to be celebrating the fact that we have all these different bloodlines that came to this country for a new opportunity. Is that something that is a central part of presenting this along with the story, but is that a part of what you hope that people grab from this?
Yeah, it's a minor element, but it's mainly a personal story about three generations of women who kind of build off each other, and it's not only about the way they live together, but the way later generations are unknowingly affected by what's happened to their parents and grandparents.
So Riot is on the way out. This one's in development. Talk to me a little bit about where we're at with the crossing right now.
It's actually, you've seen the pitch deck. It's a script and a pitch deck. The script is finished. There's not really much beyond that. I'm hoping to connect with some producers or investors who can get me to the next step, which is always a tough one. But I'm hoping that the exposure of the documentary catches some attention and people start paying attention to what I'm doing.
So where can people watch Riot? Give me there's some details. Where can people see this?
As of February 1st, it will be streaming on the PBS app. So that's free for anybody. Just go there to pbs.org, I believe. That will take you to it. And it'll be on a number of stations around the country, PBS affiliated stations. There's something called the World Channel, which is sort of a subset of PBS stations. It's 190 stations. They're going to be running it starting February 12th. It's going to run at least 3 times in February on that channel. So the answer, I guess, is mainly check your local public television listings. I'm tempted to tell people, call your station if they don't have it. I understand the stations hate it when people do that, so you didn't hear that from me.
So if anybody wants to support the crossing, see previous work, support what you're doing, get momentum for this wonderful story to get out there, what's the best way for people to dig in and do that?
They can reach me at riotthefilm.com, the website. There's a mailing list there. There's an opportunity to send a note. And if anybody wants to help out with the crossing, I'm happy to talk with them.
Okay, sounds wonderful. I will put all of these links in the show notes. Kevin, what a joy. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. Good luck on the film, both of them, from the crossing and the premiere of Riot. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You bet.